Show.
Thanks, Damon.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Like Damon just said, we're hoping to, the structure of our talk, I'm going to introduce the project, talk about our university silvopasture research sites, and then Janatul and Ranjit are each going to talk about the research that they're focused on and their work as a part of the ADAPT project, and I'll do a little overview of the project. We'd love to have questions along the way, and also trying to leave like 20-ish minutes at the end for conversation and discussion. Love to hear from you all. Like, what are you curious about with silvopasture research? What's relevant to your farms or your work consulting with farms? Are you doing research? What are you seeing? Those sorts of things. So the conference organizers asked us to talk about silvopasture research in New England. We are in we're 1.5 years about into a 5-year grant minus 4 months of being paused. And so we don't have a lot of results yet. Ranjit has some results from some economic survey work that he'll talk about today. So we're going to talk about how we're setting up the experiments, what data we're planning to collect, kind of what questions we're exploring, and kind of tell you where we're at. And hopefully in a couple of years, we'll come back with some results and have something to say. Yes?
Back up the bits of the camera. Can we make it?
Sure.
Beautiful. Okay.
I'm getting a little too much detail in the face there. Okay. So we're from the ADAPT project, which is a 5-year USDA-NIFA-funded grant. ADAPT roughly stands for Promoting Climate Smart Sustainable Agriculture in New England through Regionally Adapted Agroforestry Systems. Yeah. So the ADAPT project, our goal is to promote the expansion of regionally appropriate and diverse agroforestry systems across New England. And we do that through research, extension, and education. We are a partnership led by the University of New Hampshire with the Yale School of the Environment and Dartmouth College. We have, I don't know, a couple dozen researchers, staff, postdocs, grad students working on the project across the universities. Just so we're all on the same page, very briefly, agroforestry is the one definition. There's probably 100 we could talk about, but one definition is the intentional integration of trees and shrubs into crop and animal farming systems, and has been practiced in the United States and around the world for centuries, probably millennia, I would guess would be maybe more accurate. And today we're talking about a practice of agroforestry, silvopasture, which is the intentional integration of trees, livestock, and forages on the same land unit, aiming for a beneficial relationship and interaction between those three parts. And we would emphasize intentional integration, and this is not just animals in the woods, but this is grazing management is important in sort of making an agroforestry silvopasture system what we're aiming for. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the university experiments that we're setting up on UNH, Dartmouth, and Yale grounds. Each university is setting up experiments aiming to be as closely replicative of one another as possible. So some of the data that we're collecting, you could see a bunch of different data. We're looking at biophysical variables. Those are the top the top 3 rows here. So we're thinking about things like plant diversity and percentage of cover, microclimate, soil moisture dynamics, woody biomass productivity and carbon, crop yield, greenhouse gas emissions, forage quality, pathogens and pest pressure. And then the bottom row with Ranjit, we'll talk about some of the socioeconomic variables, like the cost of production and establishing and managing systems, household income related to agroforestry, perceptions and experiences, and perceived benefits. And please feel free to just like holler out a question if you have one along the way. An example of one of our sampling plots that we're setting up in a silvopasture system. These are going to be laid out in a grid, yes, question,
Okay, this goes back a couple slides.
couple slides. Okay.
Agroforestry versus silvopasture.
Yes.
Shrubbery is the difference
Shrubbery is the difference.
because those two definitions you gave, the only thing that was different between silvopasture and agroforestry.
Livestock is the specific indicator
Okay.
of difference. So there's woody plants in every agroforestry system, and then silvopasture would have livestock integrated in. And silvopasture is
Silvopasture would still count shrubbery as woody.
yes, yeah, woody plants. Yes.
Along those lines, there's a missing ecosystems, so to speak, in terms of all what we think of basically open grasslands and we think of forests.
Yes.
There's one in between, and that's what you're actually aiming for.
Yes.
with agroforestry.
That's right.
And it's savanna. It's basically a forgotten ecosystem. It's actually more productive than either the grasslands or the forestry.
Yes, and you'll see I have a couple of slides that show a picture of one of our silvopasture experiments that's kind of showing an example of that ecosystem that we created from a forest.
Yeah.
But that's a great explanation. Yeah. Data collection. So an example of a sampling plot that we would put in one of our silvopasture systems. We are sampling forages. So this would be a plot in the middle of a grazing paddock where we're looking at forage sampling. That's kind of the center of it, where we're going to clip forages, sort them by species, dry and weigh them. That's going to be an indicator of forage establishment productivity. And that's going to happen every time before we come into a paddock to graze. So it could be 4 times per paddock per season across a couple different silvopasture sites on each university. We're doing soil sampling. The top here that says overstory plot, that's so when we're taking a sampling point, we're also looking at the overstory or the trees in each area using data collection from forestry so that we can relate each of those plots to its sort of place in the structure of the silvopasture. How close is it to a tree? How much shade is there? We have sensors throughout our silvopasture systems that are doing continuous soil and moisture monitoring, temperature, and sort of like relating all that to the overall system. 2 ways that we're laying out the experiment. Here's an example on your right of a silvopasture at UNH, and I didn't label it, but basically, and I don't have a pointer, but basically there's a silvopasture, a treeless pasture, and a forest. And you can see that ours are in roughly 1 hectare, changed a little bit in the silvopasture, but the base was a 1 hectare block of each. This is our, I'll talk about which experiment it is in a moment. And then at Yale, this is at Hidden Blossom Farm, they laid out sort of silvopasture, treeless pasture, which is just open field, and forest in blocks throughout. And that was just a function of what was possible on the landscape context. Yes?
I'm wondering with the silvopasture portion,
Yep.
was that accomplished by removal of trees or addition of trees?
This was removal of trees, and we're doing both, and I'll talk about both of those. Yes.
So in both the silvopasture and the treeless areas, these are recent conversions from forests.
Yes, and they both started. They all, like in here, all of it started as a forest, that was of similar composition, architecture, soils, and then the 3 replicates were made from there. The project on the right was actually, there was some earlier work done stretching about 10 years ago, but the initial thinning of the silvopasture was not severe enough. So more trees were removed 2 winters ago to bring in enough sunlight for forages. Hopefully that will be abundantly growing this spring. So there's 2 pathways to silvopasture that we're looking at that are 2 different experiments. So the first one is forest to silvopasture, where we're starting with a forest, we're removing trees, and then introducing forages and animals to make a pasture. that requires the 3 treatments, which we saw in the previous photo, which is one area left alone as a forest, as our reference area, the silvopasture, which is our treatment, and then a treeless pasture, which is forest and all the trees removed so that we can compare those 3 systems together. Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So when you're removing trees from the
Yes.
forest portion, or the silvopasture portion, I'm sorry, are you leaving them to naturally decompose, or are you removing them fully?
In our, it varies by farm, can be influenced by farmer goals, how they graze, and also the cost. We have a forester on staff and money to buy equipment. So, we have a different financial context than some of the farms that we're, say, supporting. We have 3 farms throughout New England that we're supporting this practice on. So they're making some different, in some of those cases, they're piling slash and leaving it and grazing around it while it decomposes. In our case, we removed the trees, piled slash along an edge, and then used a forestry mulcher to basically pulverize it into chips and then kind of distributed them into the woods a little bit. So we removed most of the residual, but there's quite a lot of slash that, so we thinned, removed as much slash as possible with the machine, and then forestry mulched through the area, both stumps and then residual slash. So there's quite a bit of woody, like biomass left in the system. But that's done differently. Forestry mulching is, more expensive. It's like an additional cost in the forestry prescription that doesn't always work in each system. Yes.
In the silvopasture and the treeless pasture, what was the prevalence of woody resprouts?
High. I'll talk a little bit about the ideal recipe for forest conversion that we screwed up at UNH. This is just, I need to keep moving. Yale added another one where they basically did what they called free thinning, where they took the forest, they thinned it as if it were going to the tree density of a silvopasture, and then don't introduce forages and animals so that they have a 4th sort of system to collect data in and use that as a reference. So the forest to silvopasture conversion, on the left here, this is post tree harvest, and that's with a rye cover crop in, so you can sort of see like the density that we were aiming for. You can see there's a lot of trees, fairly evenly spaced, but there's a lot of sunlight coming in, which is critical for healthy forage growth. And on the right-hand side, this is what it looked like in early fall, should have been late summer. But this is, so we thinned 2 winters ago, seeded down rye. And then this year, in 2025, we should have had forages established, ideally, if we were following our own prescription, but we didn't for a number of reasons. So we forestry mulched it again this fall, and then did forestry mulched it because there was a lot of woody resprout. If you don't get grazing in there and manage them, there's a large amount of it. And then we manured, we put down lime, we harrowed to get some soil scarification, and then put down seed. So the ideal recipe that we would have followed would be the forestry portion, the logging happening somewhere between winter and early or mid-summer in the forest. And the key that we've seen in the ones that we've helped, and when I say we, it's mostly Joe Orefice, who's one of our lead researchers at Yale. Basically, you can use the thinning operation to scarify the soil and prepare it for seed. So if you do that in the early midsummer, and hit it at just the right time, and then get it ready so that you can seed directly following that in August or September, then you get a strong pasture going in the fall, and then start grazing it the following spring. That's sort of the ideal. Or if you're doing the logging in the winter, you can also forestry mulch and use that as a way to knock resprout down and weed pressure, scarify the soil if you're hitting it low enough, and then seed and then start grazing the following spring. And Joe's seen a lot of success with this in particular because it allows your forages to get established with the lowest amount of weed pressure. And then in the spring, you kick it off and start with the best seed bed possible. Yes.
Are you selecting just by spacing trees or specific preference for species and size and everything?
All of the above. Yeah. We're selecting for timber, healthy trees, some seed trees at the right density. Yeah. Yep.
Just curious, like for scarifying, what implement were you using for that?
We used a disc harrow. I bought basically a heavy, crappy used disc harrow because we were pulling it over rocks and logs and uneven ground. One of our sites is using like a big mulcher that they're basically like pulverizing the top 4 inches of soil everywhere, trying to stay away from tree roots. In some cases, you can use the forestry mulcher to scarify. We were trying that, but the uneven ground in ours is like a smaller one that doesn't have the power of doing that.
I'm just curious about sowing, like overseeding and putting animals in after you overseed, drive the seed down into the ground. Is that a consideration?
It's a consideration, yeah, and we might use that on some of the farms depending on the timing and how the forage takes. We got our forages down a little late because our mulcher was down for a month, right when we needed it. So we might have to, if we don't have a lot of forages coming up this spring at UNH on the dairy farm, then we'll have to do overseed, maybe feeding bales, some different strategies for trying to get pasture going. Yep.
Did you guys hire a forester to make a plan for you on which trees to leave and which to take, or who made that decision?
It was made by the UNH has a forester who is on staff, manages all the university grounds, forest lands, and Steve Eisenhower, he made all those decisions and did the harvest himself. And on farms that we're supporting, we're hiring foresters to do this piece of it in consultation with the farmer, depending on how much they want to be involved. Yeah.
Would a no-till drill work in that situation for seeding?
I'm seeing Megan shaking her head, who I would have asked that question to. Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah. I mean, the harrow barely worked.
Survives, yeah.
It just would depend on how much of the, at Yale, they actually hired like he had funds to like grind all the stumps down below the surface. We just did it with the forestry mulcher, which leaves like our fields are not conducive to equipment. And the dairy farmers will not use like their nice pasture equipment they'll drag around crappy stuff that I buy, but they won't use their nice equipment. Yeah, I'll go this way here. Yeah.
This is research, but I went to Joe's farm last summer and you don't need to scarify if you just skidded everything out. There's plenty of bare soil for contact. And then the most important thing he said was putting down the seed at the right time relative to rain.
Yeah.
So like August, getting your seed out there, and then you're going to have, with the right species for your area, enough soil contact if it's recently been skidded that you have good germination and you can graze it the next season. So like this is important for research to say that you scarify and treat everything the same way, but from a farmer's perspective, it's not necessary if you've just gotten in there and done work.
That's right. And it's different across the 3 farms. Ideally, we would have just used the forestry operation as the scarification, like you're saying, but our timing didn't line up on that. Yeah.
So when you got that regrowth from the forest floor,
yep,
talking about taking off down again, has anyone tried running goats and sheep on there instead?
Definitely. Yeah.
Did that work?
It has worked in the right context. Yeah. We visited farms where they've done that.
Cool.
I just, we, on our particular farm, there's only dairy cows. So there's no other animal possibility, but some of our farmers are looking at using who have multi-species grazing are using goats or pigs in part of the clearing, scarifying, invasives management. Yeah.
Did you try running cattle in there? Cattle don't eat a lot.
They were doing some grazing after the initial round of experiments, but it just wasn't. Our soils are really poor. They're like low threes pH, sandy loams. So they're just like low productivity, pretty crappy soils that like really needed some more help. Yeah.
Yeah, so speaking of the soils, I'm curious, I'm comparing the outcomes eventually to already established pasture and trying to sort of contrast this compare there. Because traditionally, if we're looking around in, not so much in New Hampshire, which is very marginal in soil quality for the most part.
Yeah.
But if you look at more productive areas of New England, most of the good soils and accessible soils with the favorable soil exposures are already in pasture. And what you have in woodlands on farms, especially intensively farmed ground, is the crap, essentially.
Yeah.
And so you're converting marginal systems
Yeah.
that barely sustain some not so great forestry growth into pasture, into a mixed system. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but comparing that to prime flat ground with optimal solar exposure is not going to be a fair match.
Definitely not. And usually New England, if it was nice prime ag soils, it's remained a field or hayland.
Right, exactly.
And so what in this particular the forest conversion, we're usually dealing with more marginal soils. Right.
So it's just overall saying what is possible, what kind of species are we seeing dominating this sort of new ecosystem that we're creating, rather
right.
than saying how's this competing with. See, I use silvopasture as for drought management, for for the really hot times,
yep.
when I really want the extra shade.
Yeah.
But it's not part of my. I count on so many energy outputs per acre out of this field. It's really
right.
an emergency or marginal system that I integrate.
Yeah. And on our soils, it's a long-term project to bring them up to productivity.
Okay.
It'll take time. Yeah, and depend on how much manure do you have, how much lime, how intensively can you graze it. But like you're saying, yeah. And I'm going to try to keep moving here. We'll blend in our Q&A. Experiment 2 is the second way. So there's silvopasture by subtraction, where you remove trees, introduce animals and forages, and then there's silvopasture by addition, where you're going into an open pasture that would typically be much nicer, like you're saying, and then introducing trees. So here's our pasture on the left, where we're going to be planting with Megan's help. And it'll look something like on the right here, which is just a picture from a workshop I was at with Trees for Grazers out of PA. Rows of trees, widely spaced, in our case, 50 feet, with tree tubes and electric wire protecting the trees. So our protocols are simpler here because we already have a healthy forage established, and we're not dealing with like the same complexity of converting a forest. So we're planting bare root trees in April and May. Each tree gets a tree tube, 6 foot tall tree tube to protect it, a weed mat to keep competition down, some mulch, and then electric wire to protect it, and then we can graze immediately following the tree planting. Species we're looking at are a mixture of fruit, nut, timber, and mast. Carpathian walnut, black walnut, hybrid Chinese chestnuts, black locust, honey locust, which is primarily for mass production, the sugary pods, pawpaw, American persimmon, bur oak, apple, and Asian pear. Each of these are laid out in, so there's 12 different species and varieties. The apples and Asian pears each have a variety, 2 varieties of each, so that they have cross-pollination. So trees are in rows. You could basically think that there's 12 trees makes a sort of what we're calling a row pair, or a block within the row. And the placement of those trees is randomized within that 12 positions in the row. And then we move on to the next 12 and the next 12. And there's 2 meters between trees, 15 meters or about 50 feet between rows. And then we have 2 different treatments. One where we're trying a hot wire, so that there's a row of trees, and then a hot wire on each side of them to protect them. And then another one, which I should have put a picture in here of, where there's there's a stake that supports the tree tube around each tree that we're planting. And that stake, the top of that stake, we're stringing an electric fence line from post to post, and then wrapping a piece off of that down around the tree tube, which should allow tighter grazing, so better weed management, and also really good protection of the trees inside that tube. So we're gonna trial both of those.
How tall is that tall ice wire?
The tree tubes are 6 feet, so the stake would be 7 typically. Yeah.
So you're just using that as a feeder, like an overhead power line, so
Yes.
then you have then drops coming down.
Yes.
that you wrap around.
To wrap around each one in those cases. Yeah. Yep.
Are you doing tubes and the 2-wire as well?
Tubes. Yes. Everything gets a tube. Yep.
For the people online, could you repeat the questions that folks are answering?
Oh, sure. Yes.
Know what you're answering. Thanks.
Yes. And I think I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you all. One more question.
How many species are you randomizing in the row?
How many species are we randomizing in the row? There's eight. There's 12 total. There's 2 each of pears and apples. So there's 9, 10 species. I think I have that math right. 10 species repeated over and over. In our case, we're planting 342 trees. Yes.
Have you guys started putting livestock in the pastures yet?
The existing pastures have been grazed for a long time.
Okay, and how is it affecting the animals as compared to just grazing? Have you noticed any behavioral changes or health changes in the animals?
It's a really good question. We haven't been grazing long. We're really just going to be getting grazing online this spring.
Okay.
I don't think there'll be a lot of effects where we're just planting trees into the pasture, because the trees won't be casting shade for some years. But it'll be curious to see in the silvopasture. We're not looking specifically at animal behavior in our research, just because it's a whole other discipline. We're focusing on mostly the sort of like the biophysical indicators and how the forages and the trees are interacting, and what that means for forage productivity. Yeah, one more question, then I'm going to pass it on.
How many farms would this study include?
We have, each university has a silvopasture by addition and subtraction, each with a corresponding reference areas on a single farm, either on or supported by the university. And then we have 3 farms throughout New England where we're supporting the silvopasture by subtraction, and then 1 farm where we're planting into an area that will maybe be grazed. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 6 to 7 total. All right, great. I'm going to pass it to Jen Toole. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jenna Tulfritus, one of the PhD students of this ADAPT project. Today, I want to discuss my research topic, the sustainable agriculture, soil carbon sequestration, and greenhouse gas mitigation strategies by adopting silvopasture system. So, from my research title, it may make sense that I would be a soil person. So, I want to introduce soil, all of you. We can define soil according to our own purpose. It is the most interesting thing of soil. Like an agriculturist, I can say soil is the medium of plant growth. But if I focus on the scientific view, I have to define soil as a natural body which develops from the natural material by the action of different natural forces. And the ultimate product is soil, which is differentiated to different horizons. And each of the horizons are different in their own characteristics. So ultimately, soil is a very heterogeneous body. Its characteristic changes within time and from one place to another place very rapidly. But when we apply something, it takes time to adapt. So studying soil is really important. And If we consider soil with a human body, it won't be wrong because when a man is healthy, he is more efficient. Just like a man, when a soil is healthy, it can provide us more fuel, fiber, and everything we want from this. So studying soil health is also another important thing. For studying soil health, we have to focus on 4 principal things. The first one, minimum disturbance. When we want to establish any agricultural practices on soil, we have to do the tillage. We cut trees and many disturbances happen on soil. It affects soil very badly. And the second one is maximize continuous living roots. Living roots is the most active portion in soil, where root tips secretes different types of chemicals in the soil, which provides push to the microbes present in the soil. So this system is very important for managing its function by living roots and maximize biodiversity. When a system is high with different types of biodiversity, it would be more resilient to adapt into different types of situations, either in saline condition, either in drought condition. When there are different types of biodiversity, this system will be more resilient. And maximize soil cover. The upper layer portion of soil is much more fertile. So to conserve a soil from being eroded or washed out, we have to cover the soil. We can do it by applying the forages, the cover crops, many things. On mulches, cow dung, there are many sources of covering soil. As I mentioned earlier, the studying soil is really very important because soil provides numerous ecosystem services. And the most important thing, all the systems are interlinked. When one system disturbs, the another system start malfunctioning, such as water regulation, nutrient cycling, carbon storage, biodiversity. These things are interlinked because nutrient cycling, when nutrients starts moving from soil to the atmosphere and come back to the soil, this is the nutrient cycling. And when there is a water limitation in soil, the nutrient won't start its cycling. Ultimately, the microbes or the biodiversity present in soil, they won't get their own food for surviving. That's why all the systems are interlinked. And fortunately or unfortunately, due to our different types of activities, as a result, we are facing the global crisis of soil degradation. Soil degradation is very alarming for all of us because if the soil degradation continues, we won't get our required amount of food, fiber, and the other things required for our life. And thus, a degraded soil is the hotspot for greenhouse gas emissions. The greenhouse gases are those gases present in our atmosphere which are capable of trapping the heat which is coming from the sun rays, the long wave radiation, short wave radiation. There are many mechanisms inside the greenhouse gases activity. So when the greenhouse gas starts emitted, they contribute into the global warming, and our climate are changing rapidly. And there are different hazardous effects of soil degradations. And to study the soil health and reduce soil degradation, we have to look on soil parameters. The physical parameters, biological parameters, and the chemical parameters. And all the parameters have some criteria for indicating their health: the aggregation stability, water holding capacity for physical character, biological character indicates mostly the microbes or the animals present in soil, and chemical parameters depends on this activity of soil, which provides the soil fertility status mainly. The fertility status is the continuous supply of nutrients to the plants from soil. If we look on all the parameters, so you can see one thing is common. This is soil organic matter. If we study soil organic matter for a soil system, we can get a general idea of this soil. Because if a soil is high with organic matter, definitely the soil is highly aggregated. If the soil is high with organic matter, it will provide more food for the animals or soil biology. And if the soil is high with organic matter, the soil is highly porous and the soil is highly negatively charged, which can absorb the positively charged cations present in soil and supply the cations such as calcium, magnesium. These cations can be supplied to the plants when they need. And organic matter is also the primary source of macronutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, and other micronutrients also. And to study these parameters, agroforestry system is a good system, because in agroforestry system we will find large trees with large root systems, then cover crops with shallow root systems, animals. From animal, they emit also greenhouse gases, and they can also add organic matter to the soil through their manures. So agroforestry system is the best possible way for studying soil parameters, and ultimately to increase the soil organic matter, carbon sequestration is the best possible way. Carbon sequestration is the method in which the atmospheric carbon dioxide incorporated into soil. But we can't just take the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to the soil. We need a medium. Here, the green plant leaves act as the medium. Where they have the stomata, they can use they can trap the carbon dioxide from atmosphere. They can use this carbon dioxide in photosynthesis, produce their biomass, and this biomass, when added into the soil, it produces soil organic matter. Ultimately, this organic matter increases our soil health. But soil not only increase the organic matter, it also emits some carbon dioxide through the respirations of the microbes present in soil. When soil absorbs more carbon, soil acts as soil carbon sink. And when it emits more carbon dioxide than the uptake, then the soil system is the carbon source. There are a lot of benefits of carbon sequestration. As I mentioned earlier, that enhances soil organic matter. Ultimately, the more the plant biomass, the more the soil organic matter formation in soil, improves soil health, ensures sustainable soil fertility. I already mentioned the organic matter is highly negatively charged surface. It absorbs refined nutrients. So when there are a lot of organic matter, it can absorb a lot of nutrients, and when plant needs these nutrients, it can release that nutrients into the soil solution, and from the soil solution, plant can take these nutrients to their root system and reduces agricultural greenhouse gas emissions. Worldwide, it has been calculated 24% of global greenhouse gas emission is responsible for the agricultural systems. So if we can increase the carbon sequestration, we can reduce the agricultural greenhouse gas emissions. And different studies also reported that agriculture for reducing the greenhouse gas and increase carbon stability, silvopasture system plays a very good role. And this is just a typical photo of silvopasture system where trees, shrubs, forages, animal all are incorporated, and they are acting as source and sink both of carbon. And focusing on the importance of soil organic carbon, I designed my experiment. I did my soil sampling from 2 silvopasture sites. Both are from silvopasture by subtraction, one in agriculture organic dairy farm in UNH site, and another one in hidden blossom farm in Yale University site. The marks on the map indicates my soil sampling site. And I did sampling in this method where I developed a rectangle of 5 by 2, and I collected soil sample from on the arm of 5 meters, 2 meters apart from each other. As I planned to monitor the soil system change with time, I had to collect samples repeatedly with some time. So I decided to collect sample on the first year of establishment of the silvopasture site and the third year of soil system. And in silvopasture side, there are different types of root systems. Large trees have deep roots, the forages has shallow roots. So I divided the soil depth into 4 depths, which is 0 to 5, 5 to 15, 15 to 30, and 30 to 50. Our soil is very rocky, it's very difficult to go below 50. And this is some photo of my field experiment. I did my sampling in silvopasture by subtraction. Where the site was previously forest, we thinned the area. So when organic matter added into the soil, they formed the organic horizon. I did soil sampling in the mineral horizon from 0 to 5, 5 to 50. So this organic horizon, at first I have to collect the soil sample from organic horizon. I did it. And these are some instrument I used in soil sampling. To go to deeper up to 50 centimeter, I need to drill the soil. This is the power source. And I need to adjust the core with the power source and then drilled. And each after time of collecting sample from every depth, I have to measure because I have the decided depth 0 to 5, but sometimes in field it extended to 0 to 7 or 0 to 4. So I have to measure it every time for my further calculation and note down it. These are some photos of soil extracting from the core. And finally, to understand the soil health condition in response of silvopasture system, I have to analyze these parameters where soil texture and soil aggregation will give me the knowledge of soil physical health, soil pH, soil carbon, nitrogen, and different fractions of carbon. Soil is in different fraction in carbon, so I will analyze the total carbon and different fractions of carbon also. It will give me the chemicals parameter of soil in response to silvopasture system and the source of stable form of soil organic matter. It will give me the understanding of biological condition of this soil. And we applied manure, mulch, and plant litters also. So I have to collect them for analyzing that how much carbon is added from this soil, these sources. And greenhouse gas samples will be analyzed. And my vision and impact of my research is understanding the in short term, I want to understand the response of silvopasture system in the soil. In medium term, I want to improve the soil quality. If I found the positive response of soil, then this system will be continued and this system will improve the soil quality. And ultimately, it will increase the net carbon sequestration in soil. Thank you.
Yes. Not to sound too harsh, but you guys haven't done anything yet other than logging operation, right? And so, just to be go into this a little deeper, I didn't see. Are you sampling the forest, the portion of the silvopasture system that's forest that is the control group as well? And are you taking into account natural decomposition processes there that also add carbon in the way a mulching system would? I mean, I'm expecting you see massive carbon loss in the first 5 years before anything starts establishing roots and actually the forage system starts producing, more, first 2 feet layered carbon deposits, or even liquid carbon, or early formation of stable carbons. So this is all really great and valuable, but what is the you're showing us a long-term perspective here, but what are your expectations actually in carrying this forward? Is there an institutional follow-up? I've seen so many of these systems being set up and then 5 years later, 3 different researchers, it's abandoned, we don't get any data, and it's a loss in that sense. I'm not trying to criticize you personally, but often universities and institutions don't have the follow-through or the generational follow-through, right? In terms of students of generations of PhD students that do this.
Thank you. It's really a nice concern and questions. But I did sampling in the silvopasture site here in my map. This site is the silvopasture. This is the treeless pasture and this is the forage.
Yeah.
So I did sampling in 3 of the sites for the first year data. That which is the condition of my soil right now. And after start grazing and establishing, I will do my soil sampling in the 3rd year. Or if it needs, I can also extend it to 4th or 5th year. As I'm a grad student, I have to finish my PhD also. So I have a timeline. Yeah, I can stay here for 40 or 30 years to monitor that how the soil is responding. So it is my timeline that I will do. And definitely if this system exists and to give us positive response, there someone will come to take my place and continue. One thing.
I'll just briefly say, this is a 5-year grant. Who knows what funding is going to do? But our intention, the intention of the principal researchers is to establish a long-term research center for agroforestry at UNH, and to apply for. We're planning on applying for continued funding in year 4, and trying to continue the program. Depending on what grant funding does in the next couple of years.
I'm just going to add something there. This UNH is not the only organization doing biophysical research. We now have the technology to measure ecosystem function using drone technology, and that's actually happening across the Northeast. And what is being studied here has been studied across the world. So there's like historical knowledge of and modeling of what's going to happen in these systems. But this is just a starting point. We need this starting point here in the Northeast because we don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, I ran a CSP grant 5 years ago that did this for a 3-year project in Vermont for Butterworks Farm, Ben Nottman's place and my place, through the Dartmouth Soil Lab. And I'm very familiar how you set this up and what happens. And the problem is that it's really hinges on the institutional whole.
I guess what I'm saying is that there is long-term funding that's now entering these systems.
And that's great to
because
hear.
we recognize that that was a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing research.
Thank you.
Question, or questions, is one of the things that we can use as producers of livestock and whatnot, and basically looking at the biological interactions, so you're talking about shallow roots, deep roots, you're talking about microbial activity. Let me ask that, and you're talking specifically about soils. Are you familiar with the Haney soil test? And have you used that, and would that be something that we could actually use as producers to monitor our own soils if we do silvopasture along this lines? And specifically, the Haney soil test is what I'm asking about.
Actually, Haney soil test you can do to understand how is the pH of your soil and the organic matter content. I don't think you can do the organic matter content in the field level, but these analysis won't give you the precision data. These are not accurate that you can completely depend on them for establishing one site. We also did our pre-treatment soil sampling, analyzed them for getting a general idea. You will get a general idea, not you can get, take a concrete decisions based on this analysis.
Does the process of making your silvopasture, is that calculation of amount of carbon that is going to be emitted as greenhouse gases in the process of creating it, is that considered as part of, I guess what I'm saying is, if, I don't know how you measure this, but if you release 100 parts of carbon in creating your silvopasture, how long until you've gotten that back? I don't know if it's answerable, but.
Reminder, could you just repeat the question to the folks online?
Sorry?
Could you just repeat the questions for the folks online? Because they can't hear the audience.
Actually, you asked that how long it will take to revive the system if we apply the silvopasture system. Okay, so if we look on the literature, soil takes a long time, mostly 30 to 40 years for adapting system. But we have to monitor the time lapse that within 5 years what happening, within 40 years what is happening. That's why we are just starting our experiment. Without getting any data, I can't give any conclusion of your questions because I have no idea that our system how will respond.
So I have a question, and then I also have a little bit of response to something they've said. When I toured Joe's farm last summer, I asked the same carbon question of, oh, you're releasing a lot of carbon with this activity. And carbon is not the only consideration for farmers with climate change. In the Northeast, we're facing more excessive heat, and moving cattle into areas with shade is one of the ways we can adapt to the changing climate. With this system, I wonder, are you comparing the impacts of herbicide application on the different test plots as relative to carbon buildup over time? And what would your hypothesis be, the impact of herbicide application on biodiversity and soil carbon?
Actually, my hypothesis here, I am only focusing on the management system because there will be also animal, they will add manure, and we are also applying mulch and manure into the system, that this organic source, how it is responding. I'm not looking on the herbicides or the liming effect. I'm not going into the chemical sources. I'm just looking on the organic source.
Okay.
Any questions?
I'll
Thank
just briefly add, so some sites have herbicide and some don't. The UNH site is our organic dairy farm, so there are no herbicides. Joe used some on his farm to control invasives. That would be the main implementation of herbicides in these systems, just during establishment. And it's a good question about long-term effect. I don't know.
Do you have a question? Yeah.
Well, I can move the comment. So the cooling to the cattle, of course, it's not just the shade, it's also the evapotranspiration or the transpiration of cooling of the transfer of infrared energy in the bonds of the water vapor that the trees are releasing from, 300 stomata per square millimeter of the surface of every leaf. There's all these individually environmentally sensitive stomata that are opening and closing, releasing water vapor. It's a huge climate regulation system. And so you're also losing that when you're, I transfer, I'm not against it at all, I'm transferring with it to silvopasture. I'm doing more collarding, but it's similar, we're up from, you've got carbon losses, you've also got transpiration losses. And that's like it's more than 90% of climate control is that, the carbon layer and the gases. It's like the pot lid on the pot. You still got, if you still got a fire boiling it, it's still going to be hot even if you totally remove it. So, the bare surfaces that you showed, those are heating up. And, when there's leaf cover, 70% of infrared is going away in the bonds of water vapor, unfelt heat, to release the heat somewhere else. Often, high up in the grain. So they're exporting heat all the time. So your cattle are not just cooling, you're also, it's cooling the whole being of the earth to have this coverage of multi-surfaces of leaves. If we can produce food in more multi-story systems and replace, open pastures, then that's a gain. But that first, cutting of woods that is a closed canopy is definitely losing. And we don't know how many years it's losing versus gain. I just wanted to say that it's not all about just the greenhouse gases. There's this huge 90% that's simply leaf controlled. Leaf surface.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, direct input on that. I totally agree with what you're saying. And in addition to this, it will be really interesting to see how the soil sponge works in terms of water buffering for each of these systems, pasture versus forest. We've seen a lot of runoff in established forests in Vermont over the last 2 flood events in the last 10 years, which was surprising. And so to see how active does the soil sponge actually work in these systems is another factor that has a deep impact on the water cycle.
Thank you, everyone. Now I want to call Dr. Ranjit Bawa for his presentation.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Ranjit Bawa. I'm faculty at University of New Hampshire. And today I'll be talking about some of the socioeconomic / human dimensions of this research. And we'll kind of go over a series of, three kind of questions we're investigating. I'll start with the first one here. And that is, what forces are impacting these kind of resource allocation decisions driving this potential for agroforestry adoption in the region? And so we do this with what's called a SWOT A&P. So the SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So essentially we're identifying, the various strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats pertaining to those influences, again, kind of driving agroforestry adoption. And then this A&P part, that stands for analytic network process. So the SWOT part, yes, it identifies the various factors, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The A&P part kind of provides a formal ranking as to is a particular strength greater than a particular threat or vice versa, right? Can we get some sort of formal ranking? And that can kind of tell us, what to focus on. Is it the opportunities that we should be focusing on, or is it the strengths? Agroforestry is often touted for its ecological benefits and economic benefits. So, which one is most important? And so before that, we kind of, during these interviews are asking these various landowners, what are the goals of even undertaking agroforestry in the first place? And a lot of them were related to the environment. So you see here, promoting healthy soils, environmental goals, employing sustainable practices, promoting biodiversity. Another kind of goal that popped up at least more than once was just basically, how do we effectively kind of utilize this existing land base in a more efficient manner, okay? And so you see that there, multifunctional land use, effectively utilizing the existing land base. Okay, so what are some of the strengths? Benefits to and from wildlife, personal and social benefits. We heard it's often soothing for the soul. It's kind of a way of life. Promoting soil health, benefits of diversity, both in terms of plant biodiversity as well as animal diversity. Weaknesses, this lack of specialized knowledge. A lot of financial concerns, with silvopastures, there's a lot of initial outlays for expenses, fencing is, that's a major expense. Time and uncertainty, so just, the uncertainty associated with having those trees, mature, right, over several years. Maintenance and upkeep. Opportunities, improvements, in ecological health, whether it's greater carbon capture or greater water retention, creating more resilient systems. There's a growing demand for sustainable products. I think, we see that, this idea that people are just kind of demanding, where are their food coming from, right? Possibly establishing relationships with local restaurants, right, to kind of sell some of their crop. Here are some pictures here we took on some of these farm visits. So these are just examples of value added things. So for example, the solar dryer there in the top right corner, even if something is just simple as drying your herbs, right? That's you're creating value. This aronia berry tincture, so they kind of douse the aronia berries in vodka. They let it sit there, and so it's kind of a superfood. You take a drop of that every day, and then apple cider there in the bottom right. Okay, so we'll end with threats. So economic viability, this idea of pests being introduced, and more generally, this idea of this introduction of ecosystem disservices, the natural degradation of the land. People are concerned about that. Lack of resource constraints. Okay, so this is what this is kind of the A and P part, right? So this is now the survey. We asked these farmers to, and we basically asked them, you know, hey, out of these two strengths, which one do you feel is more important? Okay, and you can also imagine this very similar question. Instead of two strengths, maybe you're looking at a strength versus a weakness, right? And we ask them these questions, and what we get in the end is this radial quadrant plot. Basically, what this is showing is that the longer a particular array, the more important that category was. So in short, this is saying that, you know, all of the kind of early adopters, we were asking these questions, you know, strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, threats. What is the most important in your eyes? It was the threats, all right? So people are most concerned with T2 and T3. So what is that? Introduction of ecosystem disservices and a lack of resources. So when I say lack of resources, they were mainly pertaining to capital constraints and labor constraints. Land constraints wasn't really mentioned so much. But, you know, so in short, this is perhaps saying something like, you know, it's great to, again, you know, discuss the benefits of agroforestry, but perhaps what you know, early practitioners at least really need, at least in the beginning stages, are better kind of access to resources and, you know, maybe training about trying to mitigate these ecosystem disservices that pop up. Yeah.
Did anything come up about preserved land? Because I think in the forest, it's hard to preserve and they won't let me touch it. So is there any with the preserved program be able to try and do that?
So the preserved land, you know, can you ask that one more time? I'm sorry. Yeah.
I just wondered if it came up as one of the problems is preserved land because our
Mhm.
of that is forest.
Right.
And I just can't touch it.
Right. No, that it didn't really come up. I can't. Yeah. I would. Yeah. Please.
Oh, sorry. Can you give maybe one or two examples
Sure.
of a specific ecosystem disservice that there would be concerns about?
Yes. So I think, you know, I can't be too specific about the actual pests, but basically pests, you know, when you're maybe undertaking some sort of, you know, planting of new trees, right? And so there was definitely this concern that, you know, this just kind of this degradation of the land, you know, at the beginning stages. And so the, you know, site adaptation, you know, how long is that taking? And this idea, again, that it might not be so smooth in these first few years. So, yeah.
So like removing trees, essentially.
Yes, yes, yep, yep.
Just a quick
Yep.
question. Could you
Please.
Interpret this for us again.
Yes.
Look at it, I think op strength is overwhelmingly positive to me.
Yes. So the negative, you shouldn't pay too much attention to the negative signs. The way it is that, you know, if it's, because it's all about, you know, we're asking them a series of questions, right? Choose this strength over this strength. Choose this weakness over this, whatever strength maybe. Are they being consistent in their answers, right? And this is basically what this is measuring, right? You know, how consistent
So
are
the
they?
most consistent answers are the longer.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and they were what were they? It's the threats overwhelmingly, and so
You can't like cumulatively say that there's the length of the two on the top are more than the length of two on the bottom for positive, negative.
no.
I'm using it the wrong way.
Yeah. I thought, yeah, and so so this is called a radial quadrant plot, but basically, yeah, you know, it's ranking all of the. So if you want to go by a quote unquote score, you know, you could use these numbers here. Okay, so that's kind of like, you know, the introduction, if you will. So you know, we're just getting started. We want to know, maybe, you know, what are the kind of driving factors influencing agroforestry adoption, and then we turn to, you know, the consumers and the producers. So if this was to take off here in the Northeast, in New England, would there be a price premium associated with an agroforestry grown crop? Yeah.
Sorry, just a quick
Yeah.
question before I do that.
Sure, sure.
The sample size of people and
Yes.
the geographic area, I don't know if maybe something.
Yep. Yeah. So the geographic area was all of New England, and the sample size was 27. 27. So we physically visited 17 of these farms, and for 10 of the farms, we conducted the same interview online. In terms of the sampling scheme, we use a snowball sampling method, right? So kind of word of mouth, basically, to kind of get us up to that number of 28. Okay, yeah, so here we are. So this then kind of entails a willingness to pay question and a willingness to accept question. So this willingness to pay survey, we conducted it just this past summer. And by the way, this is all my graduate students' work, okay? So I'm just reporting what she did.
Typical.
And so the geographic scope, again, is the 6 New England states. How did we determine, what county we're going to go visit? We wanted to visit a county that was most representative of the state as a whole in terms of demographics. Okay, and so we actually ran a very short optimization scheme and kind of came away with those counties that most closely matched the state as a whole. And the location was supermarkets and farmers markets. So basically what we did is intercepted shoppers on site and basically asked them if they were interested in taking part in our survey. So the fruit then that we were considering were blueberries, apples, and chestnuts, right? So these aren't, when I think of agroforestry crops, I'm thinking of things like elderberry, maybe gooseberry, pawpaw, right? I mean, this is intentional. We wanted to select very common fruit, okay, across New England. Because I guess the thinking is that, if this thing is going to take off, can we see if there's even interest with the crops that are being grown already in kind of mass production here? So the sample size for this was 575 individuals. Okay, and so this is basically what a participant was to see. They have 2 options here, option A or option B. And as you see, in addition to the kind of production system, it's a conventional system or agroforestry system. We also have things like origin. Is it organic, right? Because if somebody is saying, are you willing to? How much are you willing to pay for this quote unquote agroforestry crop? They may have this idea that it's grown on an agroforestry system. It must be organic or it must be local, right? In the end, no. We want to tease those effects out, right? So in the end, all you're left with is some sort of inference of this agroforestry premium on the crop. Okay, that's the idea. And then the status quo here is, so this was defined earlier, that's why you don't see it here, but the status quo is what you would most likely encounter in a supermarket, which would be not organic, not local, and definitely not grown on an agroforestry system, right? And so then by that logic, it would also have the very, it would have the most lowest price out of all of these, right? Okay, so basically, I have this equation here, but you're saying that the willingness to pay is a function of price. It's a function of it being organic. It's a function of, the ag system, the locality. And so you can kind of, this is a regression equation. It's kind of estimating their utility, their indirect utility, and then you can kind of do a technique here where you divide, the coefficient of ag system by price, and then you can basically get a willingness to pay for agroforestry crop or a willingness to pay for it being organic, right? I told you we want to be able to tease out all these different effects, right? Okay, so then the willingness to accept study, there's a question mark there. It's hopefully in summer 2026, if not maybe fall of this year. So what exactly are we doing? Willingness to accept for what? So the willingness to pay question was, a willingness to pay for higher quality fruit at the supermarket, right? Here we're asking you, the farmer, right? How much are you willing to accept as compensation? How much would you need as compensation in order for me to induce you to take on these agroforestry practices capable of cultivating such fruit, right? So that's the idea here. So again, the geographic scope would be these 6 New England states. And so here, the idea is to kind of hold some focus groups. Yeah.
So based on these several presentations, I think it's safe to infer that there is a high capital for starting this, these types of systems. But do you have any data or foresee a situation in which once you're established that you can get the price and cost of operation down because everything has kind of been like established?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I think, you know, the thinking now is, at least from our interviews, like one of the things we kept on hearing was, you know, and this also would no doubt carry over to the cost side of things, like, you know, in terms of like, what are you doing? What works? Oh, it's very haphazard. We're still experimenting, you know, we'll see what works. Okay, so just quickly, then for these focus groups, who are we kind of recruiting? We're recruiting contacts met through our kind of own professional groups, conferences, including this one, if anyone's interested, the ADAPT project, yeah, as well as classes. Even some of the classes I teach, there are older students there that are actually, to my surprise, silvopasture adopters, and I've met a few there. So then the location would be at UNH. Perhaps it's possible it could be virtual as well. But basically, we would collect maybe 8 to 10 individuals and kind of hold 2 to 3 sessions of these and really just kind of go over, you know, the different components of costs associated with implementing these systems. So, you know, what are the one-time costs, right, that are only going to occur in year 0? What are the annual operating changes in costs, you know, such as labor, inputs? Is there a risk premium associated with some sort of learning curve for establishing these agroforestry practices, or cash flow risk that you demand? And so I think this needs a little more work in terms of what are the questions we actually want to ask. But I think it would be really cool to get this, because the idea is that, just quickly, then we can have a willingness to pay and a willingness to accept estimate. And then we could ask, you know, are they converging? Are they not converging? Why not? Yeah.
Is any of this looking at how silvopasture could save you money? Because I think, you know, like for our farm, you know, I don't know how much higher, I'm already pricing my product where I think it can price this higher. So, you know, if I take on a new project or expense, like I don't think I'm adding $2 more to the price per pound for my chicken.
Right.
You know, like it's already as high as I think I can put it. So is there any research being done for how it could possibly save you money in the future?
No, but with that said, this is still, at least this part of the research is still quite moldable. Yeah. And so, yeah.
It seemed like a good idea to sort of tag on to that.
Yeah.
Point about willingness to accept study.
Yeah.
The only metric we're looking at is financial. The reason I'm asking that is if we're looking at our farms as a whole system, something more diversified, maybe it's a way to, you know, layer enterprises, add an enterprise, or create a solution for one. Things come to mind like, okay, we want to stop the pigs from tearing up the pasture, maybe we can clear some land with them, let them do their pig thing out in the woods, create that. And then that creates a pasture where we can get the sheep away from some parasites or into some shade in August. And another question is, we have 2 terms in use in this room, agroforestry and silvopasture. And when I see pictures of agroforestry, there's pawpaws, tree nuts, and that sort of thing planted out in the pasture. And when you see pictures of silvopasture, we're talking about dairy farm decided to clear a few pastures of the woodlot, will create a shade pad. For those different production models that were described, sort of like grass-fed versus pasture, right? Thoughts on that stuff?
Yeah, no, just I think what you're getting at is to, I mean, that's a level of granularity you want to make explicit in these, maybe these focus groups, right? I mean, Yeah.
I would be really interested to introduce the concept of nutrient density into this discussion. When you're talking about what you're actually selling, it's nutrients. And so organic does not state that by a long stretch. You can test carrots from Mexico, organically grown, there's actually zero nutrients in there. Like the bricks is converging towards nil. And not just part of Mexico, other places too. So organic does not mean that you actually find nutrients. So are we actually arguing that there's an additional benefit for consumers other than helping the environmental systems, which we're still unclear because we don't have data on is this carbon and water cycle improving or not? Now, as a farmer, I see certain benefits for myself and my operation, but does the consumer actually get the benefits in terms of better nutrition or better fruit quality at the end? Out of that, that would justify spending on it.
Yes. And
so Dan Kittredge, who's also here, would have a lot to say about that. That's really hard to test that.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So I as soon as you have silvopasture, you have opportunity for canopy purpose because you have animals right there to drop things to, which is an animal sufficient way. And there's all these things that have not yet been fully explored that are in trees and shrubs that end up in product that end up being probably there's antioxidant, and tannins and the phenols and all these different things that are in this stuff have not been really tracked into the milk and into the meat. But I think that the nutrient density thing is keeping right on, and there's opportunities to explore that.
I agree.
And food is expensive. Healthcare is more expensive. People will pay a lot more. And it's a health benefit too. And also on the preserve land question, I wonder if it's limiting for just pruning, because when you prune, you're also letting sun in. So when I made silvopasture, I hardly had to cut a tree because I'm letting the sun in a different way.
So it's a lot of awesome discussion here. I want to give you just a chance. I think you're almost to the end. A lot of really good research questions. So the Northeast Pasture Consortium, if you missed Jen this morning, there is an opportunity to submit these research ideas that you have down in the main ballroom. Look for a poster that gives you the opportunity to submit that. And the Northeast Pasture Consortium does compile a list and send it to researchers. So there are a lot of really good ideas. Some of them are closely related to this project. Others seem to be a little bit outside the scope of this project, but really good ideas. So if you've been inspired by that, please do go down and look for the poster that describes the way that you can submit those research questions, okay? But I think we're gonna pause on the questions, let you finish up, and so we're not holding everyone from lunch, because we're right at noon. So, but thank you all for all of the questions. It's been really great.
Okay, just a few more slides. And so this is more of an idea at this point, but so this idea of revealing the economic benefits of agroforestry. And so what am I talking about here? So often when we talk about agroforestry, we say the economic benefits, people might have this idea of, so what? Fine. Greater gains. Okay. But maybe, when, for example, an agroforestry regime, one of the maybe drawbacks about that is that, it doesn't provide a lot of yield, right? And so when I think about economic benefits of agroforestry systems, it's true, it's possible, yes, that the gains could be higher, but I think what's really more kind of interesting is that when times get really, really bad, agroforestry might be able to save us, right? And so it could, in other words, cut our losses, okay? Whether that's through, another kind of income stream, so that's contributing to, diversification from your revenue channels, or in terms of, really bad weather events. So for example, when a drought hits or when a late freeze hits, can we show econometrically using really, really big data sets, across space and across time that yes, after these big events like a drought or like a late freeze, those counties that have adopted agroforestry show a much less severe drop in net farm income than those that have not adopted agroforestry, right? And so that's basically the idea here. And so this map is just showing the agroforestry adoption rate by county. I think the biggest ones, counties, or the largest state in the country in terms of agroforestry adoption rates is Vermont. But you see a few counties here in red. These are kind of outliers, have really big adoption rates. Some of these counties could be a little misleading because this might be I've only 4 or 5 farms, for example, right? But that's the idea here.
Looking into USDA practices. So in the case of Vermont, it's
Yes.
higher than riparian buffers.
Okay, yeah, and yes, and so USDA, this is based off the Census of Ag data, right? So they're only kind of considering these 5 agroforestry types. But with that, thank you all.
Our emails are here. There's also this QR code for our newsletter, the New England Agroforester, which is a quarterly newsletter. Get in touch with ideas, stay in touch with us that way. Yes, more questions.
And if anybody is interested in joining these focus groups, please email me.
Well, where are you headed?